We've all been in that situation where someone asks you, "Hey, how are you doing?" And we say, "Fine, thank you." Now, when we say fine, a lot of times we aren't actually fine. We're either extremely well, we're feeling really good, or we're having a really bad day. And whenever we say something that's contradictory to how you're actually feeling, that's where we get the idea of cognitive dissonance. So today we're going to talk about cognitive dissonance theory, but before that, I want to give some announcements, talk about the case studies, that kind of thing. So first, let's talk about the case studies. I want to remind you that you have one due in 2 weeks. So I want to make sure that you fully understand what I expect. I am disappointed that more people didn't revise as I suggested, or didn't complete them at all. It was really disappointing to me. You had the opportunity to send it to me ahead of time and have me give you feedback so that you had a higher chance of getting full credit. But many of you chose not to do that. And the people that did all of them ended up with full credit because they put the effort out ahead of time to make sure that they understood the assignment. But let's go ahead and go through a breakdown of each section of the case study once again to make sure that you understand. The first thing that you need to understand how to do is the title page. I want you to refer back to the sample case study and do exactly how the title page is done there. This is APA style formatting, and the reason why we do that is because if you're going to be in any of the social sciences, or if you're going to be in communication, that's what's going to be expected of you. So you need to be able to know how to do that. So maybe one day you can be published, or just so that you can do well in your other classes that expect this format. So the first step to follow this format is to do the correct title page. Next, you need to have headers over every section. So you should have a header that says introduction, one that says case, one that says theory, one that says application, one that says implication, and one that says conclusion. All of those are formatted the same way as in the sample case study, so you can refer back to that to how to do your headers correctly. You should also have page headers, which would include the running head and the number of what page it is. You can look at the sample case study once again to see how that's formatted. Next, I'm going to talk to you about the introduction. The introduction should start off with a concise statement that really introduces you to the topic, that gets the reader's attention. It should be followed by the thesis statement. And the thesis statement should say, "In this paper, I argue that cognitive dissonance theory helps us make sense of our interactions." Something like that. Just anything that is very specific, very concise, and has one main idea and one main argument. You should follow that by your preview of points. It should sound something like, first, I discuss the case. Second, I develop the theory. Third, I apply the theory to the case before providing meaningful implications. Something like that. Something very close to that. You should include the headers, what they're called, and the preview points so that we can understand how your paper is constructed. Next comes the case or the theory section. It doesn't matter which order of these two you put it in. You can put it either case first or theory first. But we're going to talk about the case first. What your case should be, it should be something that you've experienced, which it should be a detailed summary of something that you've experienced, or a detailed introduction of something that you've experienced. Or it should be a scene from a movie, a book, a play, something like that. Something that you can identify specific elements of the interaction out of. You should just give us a brief introduction of this. It should be about 1 paragraph long. That paragraph should be about half a page to a third of a page. Maybe even just a fourth of a page if you do it well enough, if it's very descriptive. The next section is the theory section. In this section, we need to have a brief understanding of what the theory is about. You should cite sources in this section. You should cite who you're getting this from. Your citation should be in parentheses with the title, the author's last name, comma, year that it was published, and if it's a direct quote, then you need to have a comma and then the page number before having the in parentheses. You each should have cited something in the theory, because you did not make up this theory on your own. So you need to tell us where you got that information. You can cite this lecture even. You can cite the material, the theory section on the additional material tab. You need to cite something. You need to tell us the main concepts, or at least the main concept that you're including in your application section. You need to define these concepts so that so I can tell that you understand the theory. In the application section, I want you to take specific elements of the case, and then apply specific concepts of the theory to make sense of the case. You can use this to either prove the theory or disprove the theory, or to make sense of what the interaction that happened. But you need to be using specific elements of the case and specific concepts, or which should be one or two, even maybe possibly even more concepts of the theory. Next, in the application section, I need you to explain to me why doing this case study mattered. Why did applying this theory to this case matter? Why should we care? What can we learn from this? What can we learn about the theory? What can we learn about our interactions? What can we learn about speech communication as a whole? Those are the topics that you can discuss in the implication section. And then finally, the final section is the conclusion. What I need you to do in this is to restate your thesis. In this paper, I discussed blah, 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 blah. I argued that, blah, blah, blah. To do this, I discussed whatever the case was. I developed the theory and then applied the theory to the case before providing meaningful implications. And then you refer back to however you got our attention in the first place. So you might have said, communication isn't always easy as your first attention getter. So in your clinch, you're going to say, while communication isn't always easy, by researching communication, we can become better communicators, or we can make it easier. Whatever. So that's the case study. You should also have a references page where you use APA formatting. Again, you can use citationmachine.net, and they can help you develop your citations. They'll ask you questions, do APA formatting. So now that we've done that, let's talk about cognitive dissonance theory. I kind of gave you an idea of what it was. It's whenever your behavior doesn't match your attitude. So how you feel doesn't match what you're saying or what you're doing. We consider this very unhealthy when you experience dissonance. One time, since you've all shared so much about your lives through the discussion comments, I'm going to share a little bit about a time when I was feeling dissonance. When you're getting your master's degree, you meet with your advisor and they help you develop your master's thesis or your master's project. And so I was meeting with my advisor every week, and at one point I had a lot going on. My mom had left my dad. I couldn't find enough participants for my study, and I had just gotten married, so we were trying to make sense of how this new life that I was having. I had gotten a new job, and I had set these deadlines for myself, and I was feeling very, very overwhelmed. But when my advisor asked me, how's everything going? Are you making it? At first I was like, okay. But he could tell by the look on my face that I was obviously not okay. I was incredibly overwhelmed. And at that point, when he called me out on it and he said, no, I can tell that you're feeling very dissonant, that you're experiencing dissonance. And we had just talked about it in his class, so it was really interesting. So when he called me out on it, it made me open up and be realistic about what I was feeling, what I was experiencing. And, I bawled my eyes out, of course, and I'm not a crier, and so it was a huge release for me to be able to get rid of that dissonance, to make sense of what I was experiencing verbally with my advisor, and it helped him know how he can help me complete my goals, and to make sure that not only was I emotionally healthy, physically healthy, but also to make sure that I completed my master's thesis project on time, and so that I could teach this semester, which was my goal. So that's when I experienced dissonance. How the book describes dissonance is they make sense of it in 3 hypotheses. That dissonance exists, first off. We've all experienced it. But they make sense of dissonance and really capture how it works through 3 hypotheses. The first one is that selective exposure prevents dissonance. So that when we know that we're going to have to disclose to someone, or when we know that we're going to be sitting in a situation with our friends when they're going to ask us how we're doing and things like that, that we're more likely to be honest about how we're feeling. If we know that we're going to have to disclose how we're feeling, like with the psychologist, then we're more likely to not experience dissonance, but to be more honest with how we're feeling and what we're experiencing. The second one is that post-decision dissonance creates a need for reassurance. So we've made this decision to get our master's degree, and we're feeling like we can't, that we aren't going to be able to do it, or we made this decision to teach interpersonal communication online, and we're really second guessing ourselves because we don't understand if our students are getting it, or if they're enjoying the class, or if they're able to apply these concepts to their daily lives, or if they're becoming better communicators. You have this idea that maybe you're not, I'm going to be honest, maybe I'm not qualified enough to teach you this because I only have a master's degree. I don't have a PhD yet. But then, so through the discussion question about give me feedback on what I can improve and what's going well and what you like and what you don't like, it provides me with that reassurance that everything's okay. Because several of you said, the lectures are great, they help me out. And some of you said that they don't help you out, and that's okay too. I just need to understand where you're coming from and how you're learning. And that discussion question has really helped me know that it's going okay. You are learning, you are understanding. And those case studies let me know that you do understand because you're able to apply theory to things that have happened in your life, or things that have happened in a movie or a book or whatever. It helps me know that you understand it. The third hypothesis is that minimal justification for action induces a shift in attitude. So when we first thought about dissonance, we thought that if you change your attitude, you could change your behavior. But that was really kind of a false logic. Instead, when you change your behavior, you change your attitude. So let's think about this in something that maybe you've experienced or maybe I've experienced. You think that you're not going to like Brussels sprouts. Growing up, I thought I would hate them because everyone says that they hate Brussels sprouts. But then my mom said, just try it. You like some other things that people don't like. Just go ahead and try it. And I tried it, and it changed my complete attitude about Brussels sprouts. And I know this is a very superficial way to understand it, but it's an easy way for you to make sense of what this hypothesis is making. So by just trying it, and changing my behavior about eating Brussels sprouts, because I went from not eating them to eating them, I was able to change my attitude. But if I hadn't changed my behavior, my attitude would have never changed. They also talked about in the book that you needed to provide minimal justification for an action. So if I'm paid $200 to eat said Brussels sprout, it's more likely that I'm not going to change my attitude about it. I just did it, changed my behavior because of the inducement of $200. But if there's little to no reward for changing my behavior, then I have a higher likelihood of changing my attitude. Just as if you might not have liked a book because your teacher forced you to read it. If you go back and read it later, you might, on your own free will, you might change your attitude about the book. Personally, I hate assigned readings, and I understand that I'm making you read these things, but I have no better way to make you understand these things. But personally, growing up in college even, I had trouble doing assigned readings because I hated being forced to read something that I didn't want to. But recently, I went back and read some of the literature that I was supposed to read that I had this bad attitude about, that I hated this book, specifically Emma. I hated the book Emma by Jane Austen because I was forced to read it. And Northanger Abbey. I hated both of those. I'm a huge Jane Austen fan, but I hated both of those books because I was forced to read them. After the class, I went back and read them and thoroughly enjoyed them, loved the books, would read them over and over. But it was because I willingly did it and I had nothing really to gain from it that I was able to change my attitude about it. The book states that attitudes follow behavior when the investment effort is high. That's a direct quote. I don't remember what page it is on, but make sure to cite it if you decide to use that quote. The attitudes follow behavior when the investment effort is high. So when in the book it cites an example of the fox trying to get the grapes, and he just gives up quickly and says, the grape, I don't want them anyways. But if you had spent lots of time investing in your effort, then you're more likely to think that the change would be a positive change, that that you would have less dissonance. When we apply this to interpersonal communication, it talks about persuasion. So if you're trying to get someone to do something, the best way to do it is not to offer a high reward for doing it. The best way is to say, hey, this movie's pretty good, I think you'd like it. And it's more a higher likelihood that they're actually going to positively like it. Instead of saying, I love this movie, this is the best movie that you're ever going to watch, it's going to be fabulous, you're going to set their expectations so high that they're going to be turned off when it doesn't meet their expectation. And instead of having a good attitude about it, they're probably going to have a bad attitude about it. So, guys, this is how I made sense of cognitive dissonance theory. If you have any questions, feel free to email me once again. Thank you so much. I look forward to reading your discussion questions, and I hope you all have a great week. Bye-bye.